Alright guys, what's up? So the first thing that I want to talk to you guys about today is determining the validity of sources. So if you remember from the first process document, you have to diagnose what you think poses the greatest single threat to the continued existence of life on Earth, which is the first step for the New Futures Project, and then support that claim with a single source that you find on the internet. How do you determine the relative validity of sources both online and in professional databases? I will show you. Start by going to the Georgia Tech Library. And from the homepage, what I like to do is first log into my account so that I don't have to log in later. It's going to take me to this page. It's going to ask for second tier identification. So push and okay. So once I'm into the Georgia Tech library system, I have access to the course catalog, which I can use this field to search through. So we are not on campus, and nor are a lot of volumes on campus. So a lot of a lot of textbooks are shared with Emory. And so typically, if you are looking for volumes, you will have to either see if there's access, a lot of which are scanned and available online. If you want physical books, often those books, for example, I see online, you'll have delivered to you. So since we're not face to face, and since you guys don't really need to use library sources, it's just an overview on the library, we will not be using regular volumes. So in addition to library having physical books, they also subscribe to electronic journals. So just as a quick note, all of the work that your professors are involved in, regardless of the discipline that they're in, includes publishing in journals that are standards in their field. So I am in my field, this is the most prestigious of all of the journals in my field. In order for me to advance in rank and to gain promotion, I need to publish in this kind of a journal. So what sets academic journals apart from open source journals that you'd find on the internet, or newspapers or magazines, is both a process of peer review. So anything that you submit to Shakespeare Quarterly, let's see if it describes that too for you, and any journal, Scientific America or Nature, will be reviewed by other professors in the field, and they won't know who wrote it. They provide blind feedback, and then it goes through this specific publishing process, which is a way that in all fields, right, not just English, the value of the scholarship is determined, right? So a journal like this will only accept, 2% of people who apply to publish in it per year. And those people who are accepted go through this rigorous vetting process to ensure a certain type of quality. So in order for you as the audience to access these kinds of this kind of research, schools like Tech have to pay to subscribe to literally like hundreds of these journals. And so when you're looking for this information, which you don't need to for this activity, but you will later in the semester, you can go through, if you know the journal that you're looking for, again, you can go to the specific journal. If you don't know the journal that you're looking for, you can go to, but you know the topic, right? You can go to these big databases. Let's see. Come on. Like, for example, Science Direct. It's going to take me to ProQuest. So there's ProQuest, there's EBSCO, there's JSTOR, and like you can think about these databases as these like massive search engines that can take us here through all of the different journals that the university owns, and some of which they don't. But one thing that you do get from these types of engines, as opposed to using, say, for example, Google Scholar, is the ability to search through, journals that are not, are behind a paywall, basically. So, okay. And so we know, for example, where was I? Say, for example, I want to look at how do we determine the validity of, like this essay. We can look at, we know that it's peer-reviewed, and then in addition to its peer review and it's being published out of, shoot, I can't remember, Carnegie Mellon. Oh wait, no, that's not his name. It's an Oxford University Press imprint. And we know we can also check the author's status. So this guy is Professor Emeritus. That means that he's like mostly retired from Victoria Wellington University and a fellow at the Royal Society of New Zealand. So he edited a book with Gary Taylor. Gary Taylor is the general editor of the Norton Shakespeare. And so it's basically you check the author's affiliation, the affiliation of the journal itself, and that is what determines, this is like a gold standard, right? So moving down the scale though, and for you, what do you do if you, like for this activity or for other activities, need information, but you don't have either the name of a journal or a narrowed down specific topic? A thing that you can do is go ahead, this is super handy, click on research guides. And then from here, our librarians have compiled under the heading of 51 different subjects, all sorts of resources. So say that the threat you diagnose has something to do with emissions, climate change, the environment, right? You can click on environment. And then maybe click on sustainability. That's another key term that might be useful. And then from here, we have all sorts of different information available to us. And we can assess the relative authority or validity of the sources. That said, because our wonderful librarians have compiled this information for us, you can trust that these resources are reliable. And by reliable, I mean attempting a type of objectivity that is produced by people who themselves are credentialed and really committed to producing sophisticated information with the newest available research. Let's see what we got. How about, let's try green journals, or let's try sustainability journals. And then from here, we go to, International Journal of Technological Management, Environment Development and Sustainability, Journal of Sustainable Agriculture, Sustainability Science. I don't know exactly which of these you would like. How about Journal of Sustainable... Let's try transportation. Once I click into transportation, I can click into full text. And so it's going to redirect me to Taylor and Francis, who's the publisher. It's a really solid old publisher, publishes lots of things. And then, let's see, I want to search this journal. And let's see, carbon emissions. See what I get. All right. And so I'm going to get a series of articles on different carbon emission studies. Which looks fun. Personal transport emissions within London, explore policy scenarios and carbon. And we know that this is a reliable study because it's published in a blind peer-reviewed journal by Taylor and Francis. And we can further, let's check out these guys. This guy's at University of Leeds. Miles also Leeds. Tim's also Leeds. Leeds is a solid school. It's hard to get a PhD that would get you a job at Leeds, which is a fancy school, right? With a lot of resources. All right. So that's just like kind of a brief overview of how to use some of the library resources. But what if you just want to use information widely, or open source information on the internet? So we might start by looking at, say, for example, newspapers. All right, so sorry, I've been shopping for furniture, so you're gonna have to put up with like bed and sofa ads. So the Times, the New York Times, the LA Times, and the Washington Post all have a climate change desk. So that means that they have dedicated resources to research and reporting on climate change specifically, with a number of well-trained, reliable both reporters and people who do data visualization. So how can we determine the validity of these? It stands to reason that, the Times, the LA Times, the Washington Post are contributing a significant amount of resources to this analysis and reporting. However, right, this type of essay, so new data reveals hidden flood risks across America, is going to be at one level removed from the type of information that you're going to get in the International Journal of Sustainable Transportation, right? So these guys are dealing with and producing primary source, in these guys' case, scenarios and data. And then these guys are going to be sometimes producing primary sources, but also working like at secondary remove, which doesn't make it bad. It just makes the rhetorical situation in which these guys are publishing slightly different than the rhetorical situation in which, like, these guys, for example, are publishing. So these guys are publishing to a general audience of people who are informed but not specialists. And these guys are publishing to an audience of, for the most part, other people who have PhDs in engineering, climate science, etc. All right. So again, valid sources, different audiences, different purposes, right? So in addition to sort of like the, old, well-funded, public trust kind of newspapers, another place that you can go for, especially, I might throw Bloomberg into the mix here. This is a particularly nicely designed bit of data visualization. So, and it looks like whoever did it is extremely good at visualization and data. The other thing that you can look for in addition to, I didn't look at that. Say, for example, you want to know about Christopher Flavel. You can click report over the Times, focusing on blah, blah, blah. And it'll give you his, what he's written and where he went to school and stuff usually. Just real quick, this article also gives you the notes from where they drew the data that they graphed, right? So that's another thing. How do I determine the validity of a source if it tells me where it got its data, and then the data itself, right? So this is the same data that the IPCC reports use, so it's pretty solid. Public trust, produced at like at the national level. Okay, so in addition to academic sources, well-funded newspapers, and publicly available info. So then you might also think EPA, the UN, etc. There are places like the Audubon Society, or even these guys, the Sierra Club. So Audubon Society and the Sierra Club are centuries old. They're like, how old are they now? They're about 150, both of them. Started mid-19th century. At the same time that like the U.S. National Park Services were kind of galvanizing. So these two clubs have been around for a long time. They're NPOs, but also solicit like citizen scientists and contributions, and work to, in the case of the Audubon Society, preserve ecosystems, especially focusing on like wild bird populations. And in the case of the Sierra Club's like the first environmentalist group in the States. But both their age and their like commitment to the public good kind of helps assure the validity of the work that they're doing. So in addition to these sort of like nonprofits, we can check the status of the author herself, and see. Let's see what we know about. She's a Denver-based freelance journalist reporting on the environment publicly and its public quality. I don't know. It doesn't give her credentials beyond that, but we might then be able to assess where the data she's relying on. All right, there's not too much. Professional athletes given also burning the versus that. Cost of the carbon tool. I mean, given like the links out to other resources, we might say that this seems like a reliable essay because of where it's published and because of her commitment to noting her sources, right? Okay. So do your best to triangulate the quality of the source material you want to use. Again, I'm not asking unless you're really committed in the PD4 for academic journal level essays. But if you would, think about the types of online sources that you're using and how we determine the relative goodness of those sources. So, all right, let me know if you have any questions. I know that's kind of a lot to take in at once.